I had the honor of sitting down for a chat with Amie Williams, formerly known as Juror 864, and her co-author, Shana Hirsch. Before we get started, I want to read just a little excerpt from the author's note of her upcoming book, The Long Road to Justice, Unraveling Alex Murdaugh's Tangled Web. She says, I ask that you please remember any and all research on South Carolina versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh did not commence until July of 2023, when Shana first put pen to paper and began the long road to justice. So please keep that in mind as we go through this series of interviews. This is part 1. I'm Cassidy O'Connell, and this is the other 55%, because we don't know the half of it. And you mentioned, too, that there were so many things that you, Amie, weren't aware of because as a juror, you really had limited exposure. You didn't see all of the trial like we did. You just saw what you were allowed to see while the jury was in the room. So you said you started off having to watch gavel to gavel the entire trial as we saw it. So when you saw that from that different vantage point, did it feel weird? Did it feel like a whole different experience?
Yes, it was really weird. And I kept thinking, wow, that happened? Oh, I said, oh my goodness. And I was like, oh, that was happening while we were in the back?
A lot went on.
Yeah, because we would be back there and we're like, what's the holdup or what's taking so long? Sometimes we would think we should be going now. And now that I go back, when I went back and looked at it, I was like, oh, that's what was happening.
Yeah, there was a lot going on that you guys didn't get to see.
Yeah.
There were lots of mantrums going on out there that
I love that word. Did you make that word up?
I think I did. I think I did along the way somewhere because
I love that word and I have never heard it anywhere before. So
I love to play with words, obviously.
I love it. Love it. Love it. So I noticed that a lot of the early part of the book centers on Alex's defense team. And I'm not going to assume that you guys view my channel, but I've gone pretty hard on Dick and Jim. Almost to the point where I feel like maybe I went too hard. But I wanted to ask you, was your opinion affected after the trial a little bit? Especially for me, what I call the sunglasses press conference. And I named them the sunglasses trio from that day when they appeared in that press conference, all in their sunglasses, basically insulting the entire jury panel. I mean, that was my thing. Everybody else jumped on Becky Hill right away and rode that wagon hard. Yes. But I was like, wait a minute. When you accept that and just go with that story, you're basically saying these jurors had no minds of their own. They didn't make an intelligent decision based on the evidence, but they were so weak-minded that a little hint from Becky Hill, and they were just like, oh, we got to make the clerk of court happy. I mean, to me, it was insulting. But he also mentioned going down dirt roads, places that as a city boy, he didn't know existed. I mean, it was insulting, I felt.
It was very insulting.
But did it change your opinion of them?
I mean, they were the same.
It just validated it a little bit more.
Yeah, it just validated it a little more. I mean, for you to say, you've been down dirt roads and first thing I thought was redneck, and everyone. I don't live on a dirt road. I don't see where you came to my house, and everything you're saying is very insulting.
Yes,
and they made it seem like we were just stupid. If Becky Hill said these things, then of course we had. That makes no sense. Listen. We were not sequestered, so on the weekends I would go to the grocery store if I had to go to the grocery store, or go shopping or go get my nails done or whatever. People were talking about the case everywhere you went. Now, I tried to, shuttle away from wherever or go over to another side so I don't have to hear it. There were a lot of people saying a lot of things, giving a lot of opinions. If I was that weak-minded, influenced by anybody
Exactly.
to vote anyway. And I just felt like that was very insulting to us. And when people would ask me, it made me so mad. Even the people that I knew, that would say, did she really do all of that? And I'm thinking, are you asking me if I violated my oath? Is that because that's really what you're asking me? You're asking me if I heard her say something and I thought, oh, well, she made it sound like he was guilty, so I'm going to vote that he's guilty. No, she did not. I never at any time felt like he was pushing me to do anything. I never felt that anything was wrong. That's why when I heard this stuff, I was like, what? It was just crazy. It was just too much.
Yeah.
It was really incredible. I was just gobsmacked just listening to that sunglasses press conference. It was just, which is now what I call it because of you. I think I discovered your channel when I was like doing a lot of the early research and everything. So I was so glad that you were there for us during the whole jury tampering allegations.
But it was just so ridiculous to me and so insulting, you know. And let me ask you, if Becky Hill had come to you and said he's not guilty, would it have affected your verdict?
Well, first of all, I would have went straight to the judge because he already said he would ask us
every day.
Was anybody trying to influence us? I would have told the bailiff that I need to talk to the judge. That's what I would have done.
Exactly.
Plain and simple. If you felt like there was a problem, we had so many opportunities. Every Monday morning, Judge Newman would say, did anybody approach you? Has anybody tried to get you to sway you one way or another? And then he would ask certain days during the week. I mean, come on.
Right.
At some point you would have been like, something untoward is going on.
Exactly.
Right. And so months. No.
Like 6 months later.
No. I just, how is it now you realize, now all of a sudden you realize, no, it just made no sense to me. I'm sorry.
And when I went back and watched the trial, I just got more and more mad at Dick and Jim. It was just like, oh God, we're gonna have to listen to this again.
Yeah.
You said they never came to your house?
Not as far as, I didn't see them. So, and my dad he works outside in my backyard, and he's usually here all day. Not on a Sunday or anything, but any other day. So, if they were here, I would have known it. They were not here. And I don't live down a dirt road.
And quite frankly, the way that they talked to the alternate juror at the evidentiary hearing, it sounded like they spent a lot of time having Sunday dinner with her. Just saying. Sounded like they spent a lot of time there. But yeah, you would have heard that. And then also there were other jurors that never saw them either. So
right. If they were there here, we would have seen it. So
yeah, I
don't think they came this way.
So while we're on this topic, I absolutely love both of your level of spicy. I do. I love the way you write. I love the way you express yourselves. And I love the way you call out their type of lawyering. And it's spot on. There's bullying, there's misogyny, there's their over-the-top egos. And the way that they dealt with having a guilty client and not being able to make him not look guilty. It was tricks, it was drama, it was dishonesty. And when I see someone act like that, I don't know, I have this like spidey sense about it. It doesn't fool me for a second. It just like makes me feel physically uncomfortable. I notice things like people's eyes, the way their body language, the way they look at other people, the way they speak to other people. And if it's a man, the way they look at and speak to women. Because sometimes the way and you guys mentioned that the way they talk to men compared to women.
Yeah, it was so strange. Like, because I remember when I first watched it myself, I remember thinking, like, he literally just made Laura Rutland sound like she wasn't qualified to do her job because she likes true crime. And true crime is not the same thing as CSI. It's just not. And that doesn't, and we all get our jobs because we were confronted with different things that we enjoyed at some point, and like that's why we're doing it.
Attended a hearing. I came down there for a few things, and I was actually in the room with them. And the difference, the way they walked into the room, Creighton walks in the room. He's pulling his own rolling briefcase that's full of files. He takes the time. I mean, and as you see him walk in, you just see the connection in his eyes. You see he's on. His brain is working. He sets up his table. He knows every file that's there because he himself packed it. He sets everything up. Then Dick walks in. He's carrying nothing but ego.
Nothing but ego, yep.
But his paralegal / nanny, she has his file in her bag. And she sets it up on the table. And I look at it and I'm like, when you look at a file, if you've actually flipped through it, the pages are going to have like some rumples, things like that. But his looks like a ream of paper just came out of the wrap. That has not been opened. That has not been looked through. And to me, it's just like for show, because it sits there on the table. And if he needs anything, he doesn't look at it. He turns to her. Mommy, if I need this, yeah.
And there were a couple of times that he was like, he couldn't find something and like Holly couldn't find it or whatever. And she had to look and he was just constantly fumbling through things, which is why I loved Michael DeWitt's quote about how sometimes Dick acted like the lawyer that he's touted to be. And then other times he acts like the aged uncle who's fumbling around because he can't find his keys or something.
Exactly.
Really
trying to get the machines to work in court. It was painful.
Yeah.
Painful.
No.
Very painful.
And it was like, this trial could have ended like in 4 weeks if we didn't have all of these problems.
Yeah, because we just kept thinking somebody wanted can we go down and help? Can somebody help them with this technology, please? Because it was insane. It was insane.
So anyway, just the difference I felt in the way they walk in the room. But I noticed there were a couple pages talking about what some people have said about Creighton Waters as a person. Can you talk about that for a second?
You want me to do that, Amie? Or I'll start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Post and Courier had done like profiles of that's the Charleston paper. So that's about an hour and a half from where we are, or where I am, and about an hour-ish from Amie. And so they kind of are like, who are the major players, kind of getting the community ready for the trial to begin. And I loved the stuff that they said about Creighton and how he, like, that's how you just know that the man is integrity through and through. Like, you can see that on him in a courtroom and how much he wanted justice for Maggie and Paul and for all of the victims in the financial crimes. So I loved some of the childhood stories about like he's still apologizing for a football injury like 40 years later. Yeah.
Go ahead.
In the courtroom, that's how, I mean, of course I didn't know anything about Creighton Waters before this time, but I could tell that he was a person that took pride in his job. And did the research, did the work, and so he was on a mission. He knew that the burden of proof was on them, and he worked to prove without any reasonable doubt, that Alex was guilty. And I remember when we first walked back, I don't know if that was the first night when we were chosen or the next day, and we were walking back to leaving the courtroom to go in the back, and all these boxes, and I was like, what is this? Is this all evidence? And everybody was like, yeah, and the bailiff was like, yeah, that's that. I'm like, wow. I just thought, this is a lot of stuff. And they kept bringing stuff in, and I was like, this is a lot of stuff, And Creighton walked around when it first started, they were talking about all of this stuff, and I was thinking, oh, this is a lot. And I was like, thinking to myself, he's walking around like a proud peacock. Like he knows he has this in the bag. Right now, I can't see it. So I hope he has it in the bag. Because this is what I'm thinking. I've never been on a jury with this kind of case before. And I was thinking, this is a lot of stuff. And at first it wasn't making sense. But guess what? Everything that happened in the beginning with all the evidence and the bullets and the DNA and all of that stuff, as they continued, they were building, right?
Yeah.
It started making sense it all came together. And I was like,
Yeah, it's like just when you think it's not going to, it's like then it all
comes together,
falls, and it all falls
came together. Yes, it was coming together.
Yeah, because those first couple of days, because everything, all the pieces of evidence have to be put into evidence formally, but going through that process is painful. So they kind of got it out of the way at the beginning instead of those days of doing that were awful. And you're probably thinking like, what is this about? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, of course, I watched the OJ trial and Lorena Bobbitt and stuff like that, but I don't remember everything as intricately. So like Alex Murdaugh was kind of like my first foray back into that whole trial watching world. And now it's like, oh man, it's evidence day where everything has to be admitted. And it's like,
we can skip this day, right?
No, I'll skip that. When I was watching the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so dry.
We need to talk about.
Yeah, it really is dry.
Yeah. I was impressed with the whole team. They were very,
Yeah, they worked well together. And you know what I loved? I forgot to say this earlier about Creighton. When he walks in with his team, he treats them all the same. Like,
yes,
there's some girls on prosecution too, but you know what? They're not pulling stuff out of their purse when he needs something for him. So you also in the book, you mentioned Tony Satterfield's testimony, and that was a really touching part of the book for me. Can you guys talk about that for a minute?
It was really heart-wrenching, I guess is a good word, maybe. Yeah. He lost his mom, and the fact that he trusted Alex.
Right.
He believed what he said, and he was not making anything that he said up. I mean, it was obvious that he wasn't making it up. And he just believed what he told him, and I just felt like when Dick came on the scene, the way he belittled him was just unnecessary. And the comment he made about he's been fully compensated, I was like, what? I thought to myself, I think he would rather have his mother than money. So that was unnecessary. That was totally unnecessary. Mm-hmm. So,
and he was so
of all the people to bully. Yes.
Right. Of all the people to bully, that one you should have left alone.
Yeah. You also mentioned Shelley Smith's testimony as an important moment in the trial. And I couldn't agree with you more about that. I mean, I fell instantly in love with her when I was watching on TV. And I saw her later in a documentary. And she said her mother taught her, tell the truth if it hurts. And that sticks with me. I mean, And when I think of it in certain situations, I hear her voice actually say it, tell the truth if it hurts. Because a lot of people, they think it will serve them better to not tell the truth, but you just, you've got to do it, even if it seems not right. And that's what she did. I mean, it was obviously painful for her to be there because she loved Elizabeth Murdaugh.
Yeah.
And the family, so it was not easy. Family. She did. It was easy to see. And you could see how physically hard it was for her to do that, and I mean, that was my observation for you. Like, what was it that made her stand out to you?
I mean, what reason would she have to lie?
Exactly.
I mean, she gained nothing from lying, and it just made sense with what she was saying. I mean, why would she make that up? And you could tell that she really didn't want to be there, but she knew that she had to tell the truth. She had to say what was said to her or what she saw, But the thing that stood out to me was what he said to her, and why tell her to remember what time he left or how long he was there. Why are you telling me this? This is what I would be thinking,
Exactly.
But she was not lying, and it was painful for her. But she had to tell the truth. And that's what I got from her. And I knew she wasn't lying. I knew she wasn't.
And then to tell the story, like all those months later about the time later where he was like talking about, I'll get you a job at the school and pay for and help with the wedding and everything.
Yeah.
It's right there. And then Blanca comes on the scene and it's essentially the same thing.
Right.
Don't you remember that Vinnie Vine shirt I was wearing?
Yes, yeah, so weird. So suspicious.
So suspicious.
Yeah.
I mean, there's...
Yeah. They had no reason to lie.
Exactly.
They had nothing to gain. Because I don't see what they had to gain from it.
Yeah, nothing. Nothing.
And you could tell that they did not want to be there. That was the last place on earth that they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
you could tell Blanca was loyal. You could tell that. And she loved that family.
She did.
You could tell.
Especially Maggie.
Especially,
yes.
Yeah. She seemed to me like the only person who missed her,
Yeah, she really humanized Maggie in a different way than Marion did.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a passage about Buster on pages 57 and 58, and that kind of stood out to me. I've always tried to be kind to Buster on my channel just because, and some of my viewers kind of let me know about that. They don't necessarily like it so much. But, for me, like the punishments he's already received in life pretty much outweigh anything he's done so far. I mean, his only immediate family left is Alex, and so, I said, I never want to punish the son for the sins of the father, but I have, this really, really sweet and loyal, subscriber, Nirvana, that said, but he supports Alex. And he's also spoken out about not believing that Paul was driving the boat. And when you say it wasn't Paul driving the boat, you're basically accusing Connor Cook of having killed Mallory. And then supporting Alex, you're completely... I mean, what about your mom? And what about your brother? Do they factor in at all? So, that's kind of made me like rethink being easier on Buster. But seeing not just Buster, but the Murdaughs who did come to the trial. I mean, can you talk about like the kind of feeling Buster or them kind of put out to the jury, or if you'd rather not talk about it, that's okay too.
I mean, they seemed that they were, loyal to him and that they believed that he didn't do it. I mean, especially his sister, but so I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's what they believe and they want to stick by him, you can't really blame them for that.
Right.
But I believe that the evidence proved or showed that he did it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that he showed that he did it. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 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 I don't know how they sat in that courtroom and heard the same things we heard and could still stand by him. It's kind of crazy.
It's like there's blinders or something,
Yeah.
And, if the Hidden True Crime podcast, when Dr. John takes a look at it from the psychological perspective and talks about what an enmeshed family that they are, it really, you can you can see it a little bit differently. Like, okay, I mean, like the Murdaughs don't get divorced. Murdaughs, you toe the line, and
Right.
You maintain this image that has been maintained all of these years. And but I definitely feel like the sister completely believes in him. And,
yes.
Yeah.
Lynn, is it?
Yeah. And then Buster, but I feel like, how Dr. John in the Hidden True Crime podcast, he was like, well, my family and I don't think that he was driving the boat. And it's kind of like we supported him because we don't believe it. And it's kind of just perpetuating that this is the narrative that we're going to tell everybody.
Right.
Even though the evidence is completely different.
Yeah. Page 68, there's a quote from Charlie Condon from a tweet that he made. It's referring to the autopsy photos and that they were in color and that this was shown to the jury. And I had no idea that this was a thing, that color photos were often considered too graphic, but that in this case, defense didn't object and that he felt like they thought that it was going to work in their favor. Because a lot of people even will come and comment on my channel, because I firmly believe Alex is guilty. But they will come and say, I just can't, he loved his family. I just can't see him being capable of doing this. And, Charlie kind of said it like defense thought that was going to work in their favor. But what really bothers me is that every day, 3 women every day are killed by a partner or an ex-partner. And every day, one child on average is killed by a parent. Who do you think these people are? Is somebody, it's a lot of somebodies, and
exactly.
Yes. And just like the last couple of days, well, today, in fact, I just went through the news just to see. There was an article about a man who beat his 4-year-old into a vegetative state. So brain dead, A mom dumped her 5-year-old on the side of the highway because he was throwing a tantrum. And then she goes home, and hours later, she's like, oh, well, I better do something, and reports him kidnapped. Well, of course, he's been found already, so they catch her in that. A dad threw his baby into the wall because he was mad about a video game. And then we have this Gilly case in Texas of yet another man who killed his pregnant wife. And now for pregnant women, the number one cause of death is murder from their partner, from their baby daddy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bleeding out. It's not sepsis. It's not preeclampsia or eclampsia. It is being killed by the baby's dad. And so to me, it's so frustrating that people think, oh, well, Alex can never do that. Yeah, why is it so hard to believe? But at this point, I wanted to ask. Exactly. Because if you look at Alex, everything about his life was selfish.
Yep.
This is exactly the kind of man who would do this. And like I said, 3 women every day. 3 Alexes every day.
Well, when Maggie's sister testified and said that when she asked him who would do this, and he said, I don't know, but whoever did it thought about it for a long time. How do you know they thought about? What kind of answer is that?
Right.
How do you know they thought about it for a long time? That made no sense to me. And it didn't make sense to her either. Because she was like, what does that mean? And I'm thinking, who answers like that?
It's
Except
crazy.
the person who thought about it for a long time.
Long time. Exactly. Because
Yeah.
if you look at her murder, it's so messy. That's not a well thought out, well planned murder. If somebody was really planning her murder for a long time, they would have done a better job, you know. But he had the emotional, and I really think what happened to him is he thought he was going to kill Paul in one quick shot, and that Paul wasn't going to see him.
Yes.
And, you know, and he thought he did it. And then when Paul came stumbling out, I think that unnerved him. You know, and then it became so much more gruesome than he anticipated it being. And I think that's why when it came to Maggie, and I think Maggie probably saw that second shot. Probably not the first one, but once you hear that, you're going to come and see what's going on. Then Paul staggers out, you know, and then it became frantic. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, his comment.
It doesn't, because that person played with Maggie. That person tortured her. So if you listen to how Dr. Reamer explained how she was shot, he played with her. He made her feel pain. He could have killed her in one shot.
Yeah.
And then after she was dead and on the ground, you stand over her and shoot her in the head.
Execution style.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? That is a lot of anger.
Yeah. That's emotion.
That's a lot of anger. And that's not just somebody who decides, oh, you know, I'm gonna kill these people today. That's not somebody who did not know her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the autopsy photos, like you was, they were horrible. They were horrible.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I feel bad you guys had to see that over and over again. But while we're on this subject, I wanted to talk for a second. I wanted you to introduce your Women and Children Sanctuary, because that is such a nice thing to hear that you, because when we're talking about these women being killed and.
Yes. So, I mean, this is something that started, I think I finally, it was in my spirit for a very long time, but I finally took the leap of faith, like in 2022, I think. I don't know if it was November or December. And I went ahead and I started the nonprofit, and I didn't know how anything was going to come together, where I was going to get the money or anything like that. I just knew that as a survivor, as a person who was miles and miles away from her family and didn't have anybody in that town that knew me, that I could depend on, that I could go to, because he has already made them believe that I was crazy. You know, and I just didn't have anybody that I could trust, because nobody believed that he was doing the things that he was doing. So I feel like I want to make a sanctuary for women who have somewhere to go. It will be their home. You know, we have a shelter in Beaufort County, and it covers all the counties, really. That one shelter covers all the counties in mostly in the lower part of South Carolina, but they only house for 60 days. You need more than 60 days. When you leave, finally, you leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. And you need somewhere where you know you're going to be safe and where you're going to be taken care of, and you have the time that you need to heal physically. Yeah, so I got the name, you know, I felt like the Lord, you know, with my faith, the Lord gave me this vision and the name Sanctuary House, because your home should be your sanctuary, and they need somewhere to go where they know they're going to be, they will be able to heal, because, you know, I guess you could say our little motto is healing hearts and changing lives. So, you know, we want the healing to come in for your mind, your spirit, you know, your body. And then we want to be able to help you to find your way again, to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and take care of yourself and your children. So it takes longer than 60 days. And the shelter that's available now only houses 60 days. So we're proposing a longer term, you know, 6 months, maybe a year. And we're not going to like coddle you to say, oh, you have until it's time. because we're going to do everything we can do to get you back on your feet. But we feel like you should have that time if you need it.
That's so nice. Yeah, because a lot of, well, like you said in your situation, and I don't want to make you reveal more than you want to right now, but a lot of times what happens to these women is they do get closed off from family. And that's all part of the abuse, to make sure there's no one there to help you or to see what's going on. So,
Correct.
you know, naturally, and 60 days is certainly not long enough time. So I absolutely love, when I heard that, I was like, I love her even more. You were doing that. That is so amazing. Proceeds from this book are going towards making Amie's dream sanctuary for women and children come true. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 2, coming soon. At the conclusion of part 2, we'll be opening up to a live where you get a chance to ask your questions. This is Cassidy O'Connell saying stay well and stay tuned.